Okay, we're going to do Brexit properly in a moment when we're talking about the negotiations that are going on between Labour and the Tories. First of all, Grace, you wrote a fabulous article, we might be able to get it up, for the New Statesman about the Preston model, about what Labour should be doing on the ground if they want to boost their vote shares, if they want to take control of local government without relying on national trends, I suppose. So what have they been doing in Preston? What have they been doing right?
Yeah, so Preston's this really exciting model. It's the council led by Matthew Brown. They've just had this massive turnaround after it was, I think, 2011, a couple of years after the financial crisis. They had Preston was obviously, it was not doing very well economically, on a whole load of other social indicators, and they were putting all their eggs in this basket of this big shopping centre opening, and a load of kind of companies were getting in on this, and it was going to be huge. It was going to be one of the biggest shopping malls like in the UK, and but eventually one of the parts of the consortium, one of the companies in the consortium pulled out, and it all collapsed. So they were like, shit, what are we going to do? Matthew Brown comes along and says, look, we need to try this new model. We need to look over the Atlantic, look towards Cleveland, which had already been suffering from kind of decades of post-industrial decline, and been rescued by a kind of local movement, really, supported by the local government and the Democracy Collaborative, which is a kind of US think and do tank. I
love the way that think and do tank is now just part
I've been
of your vocabulary. You don't even have to explain it.
I've been in the US with them for a while, and so that's how they would describe themselves. They come up with policy and then try and do it on the ground. And the model in the UK is CLES, the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, that supported Preston do the same thing. In Cleveland they built this idea of community wealth building, which is essentially based on the idea that you attempt to kind of embed local capital by using the combined economic weight of what they call anchor institutions, so institutions that can't move, universities, public services like the NHS, local government, education, etc. Get them to kind of come together to use their procurement budgets in order to prioritise local companies, get them to prioritise corporations that are unionised, that may be cooperatives, and bring that together with a kind of a load of other strategies aimed at boosting kind of democratic, mutual, cooperative, collective ownership locally, and also doing things like setting up local banks, generally any intervention that's aimed at, as I said, kind of embedding capital in the local community. So they did this in Cleveland, and it had amazing results. They set up a load of cooperatives that are still going to this day. They were really successful in using those procurement budgets to keep to kind of boost the local economy. And in Preston, they followed that model as well and just had a massive turnaround. They were rated the most improved council, I think it was last year, and they've succeeded in massively increasing the amount of budget that's spent by all those institutions within Lancashire on the one hand, and then within Preston on the other. And that's pushed up obviously economic outcomes and social outcomes across the board. And it's kind of a reaction against this this very neoliberal model of running a council, which is based on the idea that you should be outsourcing services, providing them as cheaply as possible, and shrinking down the council, which can come to act as a kind of mediator between private interests rather than a provider of services itself. And the classic idea of that is like Barnett, which came up with this idea of one council where capita was just kind of brought in to run everything. And according to kind of the traditional neoclassical economic thinking on this, where these corporations are and who runs them shouldn't matter. It's all about doing things as cheaply as possible so there's more capital to go around for everyone. But of course, a lot of these corporations are run out of, what they're owned by kind of investors in the city. They pay, we saw with Carillion, they're highly indebted, they treat their workers badly, they treat their suppliers badly, they pay out huge dividends, and they're just generally kind of mechanisms for extraction, both from the public sector itself and from local communities. And it was, kind of a pushback against that to say, just because we're living under austerity doesn't mean that this is the only way forward for councils, that they have to, do this model of kind of outsourcing that's screwed over so many parts of the country. And it is really exciting. I mean, I've actually writing this week about the limits of that. So the fact that this is a really exciting new model that Labour councils should be taking up and that the leadership should be encouraging, but it's not enough without much more funding, without much greater devolution. Actually, that's a big part of it, without kind of making local government powerful again, which is also about kind of improving democratic accountability locally and making people feel
What more
closer to
powers
the
do they
state.
need?
I'd say they need powers to be able to raise more taxes locally, to issue bonds in order to invest in infrastructure.
I thought the government just changed their position on that. That
They might- I know
councils
they've
can now
been
borrow to build.
They can borrow, but they can borrow from banks. So they've been borrowing for ages. They can't issue bonds.
What's quite interesting is that other countries constitutionally protect local government as a specific tier of government in a written constitution. Like Norway, for example, 40% of all tax raised by the state doesn't go beyond local government. In the UK, we suck everything up in a big hoover and drop it through the treasury, and it all filters back down into the the subsidiary levels of government. So by doing that, it neuters local government's capacity. So I'm like, this is music to my ears as a cooperative MP, certainly. The rediscovery of a municipal route to socialism in Britain would be a fantastic policy measure to put at the heart of a Labour government. It sounds exactly what we should be sort of recapturing at the heart of the movement. And think of an example in Scotland, like Joe Cullen, the leader of North Ayrshire Council, has been showcasing how we can do that with very limited means, because local government, the budgets are controlled 90% by the government in Edinburgh, and they've been slashing them at a rate 7 to 10 times more than the Scottish government's had budget cuts. So then this notion that the SNP are somehow this beacon of this resistant beacon of progressivism in Scotland against Toryism is not true at all. In fact, they're amplifying cuts to local government. And Joe Cullen, his dad's just become the president of the STUC, for example. Like a really great tradition of municipal socialism there. So, it's one to watch as well, despite the frustrations the local government's faced in Scotland.